I was that anxious skier. So I started skiing in my late 20s and started skiing as a family in my 30s. I had my hips replaced in my 30s.
Wow, that's young to have that done.
Well, it was young.
Do you think enough is being done now to help people that need this help, or is there a lot more that could be done?
Oh, I think there's so much more.
Because as you evolve and develop and get closer towards your goal will inevitably change anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like my first goal, personally, for my skiing was just to fall back in love with it with a family. I now find I'm a leading UK, well, actually probably international coach now. I'm in America.
And what sort of businesses do you work with for that?
Oh, I was hoping you'd ask me that. I work with the small to medium-sized business sector, so I love working with smaller companies.
On this week's Engaging Marketeer, I am speaking with Louise Pode of ProAbility. Louise is a coach that specialises in people with anxiety on the ski slope. Now, it doesn't get much more niche than that. So Louise will help skiers, not with their professional skiing or their ability to ski, but with their mindset on how they ski so that they can enjoy themselves better, enjoy themselves with their family and not feel isolated on the ski slope. She does a lot more than that. She's also worked with the military, she's worked with the army, she's worked with the RAF, and she works with businesses on helping them improve their values and improve their profitability within their business. So let's get in there with Louise. You mentioned your experience, because we talked about a mutual client that we've got, your experience with the military. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because you don't strike me as a person that works within the military. If you don't take that the wrong way.
That's it. Well, there's an interesting question. I should be asking you about. No. So my background is I'm a physiotherapist. So I qualified in Leeds, and I as soon as I qualified, I went straight to Australia and worked in Australia, which was quite unusual back in the day, and worked in Perth as a community physio, and then worked in Sydney and travelled around Australia. Ended up meeting my husband there, and came back and worked in London at Guy's, and was very focused on being a musculoskeletal physio. So that's back to now.
That's easy for you to say. Hang on, go on. Musculoskeletal.
So
right.
And joints. And that was I loved doing that. And then I I moved back up to Yorkshire after about 5 years and started working for the military for a training battalion in Strensall.
How did you get that gig?
Because I was interested in outpatients. I wanted to work in different environments. I wanted to diversify, but I didn't want to do purely private practice, because that's very different. I love working in the NHS, but I also wanted to, as I say, to just sort of develop my skills more. And I was really interested in, in the whole military environment, the training environment. And I suppose that was aligned with the fact that by that point, was my husband then, was he? He had joined the military. He was in the Army Air Corps, so was very familiar with the military background. And so I got this job at Strensall working with the training battalion. So these were phase 1 recruits that were being trained, and I would work in the clinic and the med centre with the doctor, but found that we were just getting the same old injuries through. And it's like, what is going on out there? We need to look at your training programs. We need to modify the training programs. So that got me very interested in how you create a working environment for people to perform at their best, a physical working environment. I then set up a physio service at RAF Linton, which is just around the corner from Strensall, which is where they do the phase 1 fast jet training.
Can I delve into that first? You mentioned you were getting the same injuries from people constantly because of the way they were training.
Yeah.
I hear this a lot in football. How certain football teams, like Tottenham Hotspur at the moment, are having lots of injuries, and apparently it's the way the manager does the training, because he had the same problem when he was the manager at Celtic. What exactly is it that people are doing that's causing these repetitive injuries?
Well, you get a lot of repetition in the very nature of training if you're exercising over and over again. But it can be just things like if you're running on a road that's got a certain camber, then it's then they're getting a muscle imbalance because they're out of sync with the joints and the muscles. So if you're running on a road that's on a slight angle and you're doing that time and time again, that will start to create injuries within the body because you're getting different stresses and strainers. So it can be any number of things. So that really got me interested in ergonomics and the whole working environment. And of course, that came from aviation in the very first place. The design of cockpits and in the war for where the controls and things go was kind of where ergonomics was born from. So I went off to Loughborough, did a master's in ergonomics, and that was fascinating because that wasn't just about the physical environment. That was also about the emotional environment. How do you create a culture for people to thrive in? So not just the physical working environment, but how do you create a positive culture where people feel really engaged? How do you motivate people at work?
So you, with Loughborough, obviously, we've had clients in the RAF before selling RAF merchandise, former RAF people. How interesting are they in terms of the difference between RAF and Army? Because they've got this, I don't want to say love-hate relationship. They really do bite on each other quite a lot, and they make a thing of it. Did you see any of that, having worked with both sides of it?
No, I didn't. Not at the area, because I was working very much on the clinical side. So no, I didn't. For me, there were patients presenting with challenging musculoskeletal problems, and so it was very much focused on rehab and diagnosis and motivation and treatment. So no, I didn't. But I do know what you mean, and I think with all of them, with the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, they all have different cultures within them. But no, that wasn't something that I experienced.
Well, that's good, probably. That's good. In terms of, I'm going to try and say it again, musculoskeletal. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, musculoskeletal.
Yeah. I'm going to learn words today. Presumably with the RAF, you're seeing different types of injuries, because if these are pilots, there's going to be movement from being in the plane and G-forces, is that correct?
Exactly, yes, yeah, there was. And, when you've got neck injuries and things like that, when re-engaging with service, because they have particular stresses and strains, if you're pulling negative G, then, the level of fitness needs to be different again. So yes, fairly different types of rehab, not necessarily dissimilar injuries. A lot of the injuries would perhaps be sports injuries, training injuries, because obviously they're all keeping themselves very fit all the time. That was a long time ago. I haven't practiced as a clinical physio for 30 years now, but that was very much my kind of introduction into broadening my scope and looking at the different areas, because once I'd done my master's in ergonomics, which was fascinating, absolutely loved it, I then started working. I set up my own ergonomics consultancy, but because I had a medical background, I was really interested in why people who were in the corporate sector, who had long-term health conditions, weren't really making senior manager, never mind director level. What was going on there? And this was just back in the day when the Disability Discrimination Act was just coming out. And when I started working with those individuals, I soon came to appreciate that you can have a great skill set, you can have a really good working environment, but if you have low self-esteem, if you have lack of confidence, if you have self-limiting beliefs, then that would really hold you back. And actually then that for me was like the final piece in the jigsaw, because you've obviously got the physical side of the fitness and the skills, you've got creating the right environment for people to thrive in. But if their mindset is in the wrong place, then that becomes their ball and chain. So that was like, oh, that's interesting. So that kind of took me on a coaching trajectory, which was really fascinating, because by then, when the children were younger, I was doing a lot of ergonomic assessments for access to work. So you travel around the Northwest. And a lot of it was computer design, so it was workstation design. Some of it was manufacturing. But I was picking up that there were people, whilst they were having physical problems, musculoskeletal problems in the workplace, there were a lot of mental health issues that just weren't being dealt with back in the day. So it took me 6 months to get to see the head of access to work. And I said to her, look, I really feel that you should be addressing mental health in the workplace. And she said, well, that's interesting, but it's a challenge, because people with mental health would tend to step backwards rather than step forwards. You don't sort of put your hand up and say, yeah, I'm depressed, I've got anxiety, can you help me? And so she said to me, if you want to put together a proposal for delivering a service in the Northwest, we'd be really interested. So I designed a program which was very much around coaching. So it was about working with individuals who all had a job, but they were on long-term sick with some form of mental health. And it was fascinating. So the model was very much about enabling them to understand what their barriers to work were, enabling them to create a goal that was aligned with overcoming those barriers, and facilitating them to create the action plans to overcome that. So really empowering them to take back control. And honestly, Darren, on day one, go and see somebody and it'd be daytime TV, curtains drawn, onesie on, smoking away, watching the television. They would have a job down the road, which they were physically able to do, but emotionally very far removed. Their comfort zone had shrunk right down. Seeing that person 3 months later back in work was just a game changer. And it wasn't just about the financial remuneration. It was about that sense of being valued, that sense of routine, the social interaction. Work brought so many other things to them. It was like, this is really interesting. This is where, this is where I'd really like to focus my attention. So the pilot for Access to Work went over 2 years. We supported 178 customers in the end. And that went on to become a national service, which was initially run by Remploy and is now run by Maximus. So that was kind of my real immersion into coaching and the way you can work with individuals to change their mindset, to have more of a growth mindset and really engage and be motivated. So slightly different route to most coaches. Most coaches would go into executive coaching through HR and through the corporate world, whereas I've come at it from a very different angle. So have, all those different experiences that really come together, which I feel creates a very holistic approach to the coaching.
And obviously you can't give specifics on that because you'll have confidentiality, but what sort of issues were people facing that was preventing them from going in and making them want to stay at home and, as you said, curtains drawn, daytime TV on, and not face the outside world?
Anxiety about a real fear of stepping back into that threshold. Would they fail? What would be expected of them? What would their colleagues say to them? So much uncertainty, which creates a lot of anxiety. And when you step away from something for a long time, your comfort zone really shrinks. You see less people, you do fewer things, very much like COVID did to us as a society. Everybody's comfort zones shrink right down, and it became really hard to expand that comfort zone back out again to include the work environment unless you get the right support to do that. But when you get the right support, it's amazing. I mean, we average 7 hours of one-to-one with each of those Access to Work clients, and 70% of them on long-term sick got back into work and were still in work at the 6-month point. It was extraordinary, but it was because it was very focused, it was very person-centred, it was all about that individual, enabling that individual, and then working with their employer to get that balanced perspective. It's important for the employer to understand where they were coming from and what their limitations were, but it's equally important for the employee to understand the employee's perspective so that we could put the phased return back into place and monitor it. It was big. This was back in 2011, 2012. It was a big piece of work, but it was very empowering and was hugely enlightening for me as an individual. That really set me on this course for my coaching.
Did you say an average of 7 hours?
Yeah.
7 hours. That seems very short to get somebody from a position of never wanting to go out of the house to getting back into the workplace.
Yeah, no, and it's extraordinary. But if you really work with that individual to enable them to understand what their barriers are and to vocalize those barriers, and then enable them to create a goal around that and to set up that action plan. So you do it step by step. So you're not looking at the enormity of going back to work. It's like one step at a time, right? Let's understand what's holding you back, what's stopping you from being there now, and really understand, which is that real coaching piece, that create the goal, look at where you are now, where you want to be, how you want to feel. It's that gap in the middle, which is the interesting coaching piece, the things that stop you from being there now, that you're enabling them to overcome that. But 7 hours, so that 7 hours would be spread over probably, it was maybe 3-4 months. So you'd maybe have 4 hours, once a week, an hour a week for the first 4 weeks to really get that momentum. And then you kind of step back and enable them as they really start to build that confidence and their self-esteem, step back out there.
I presume you'd have to do that, wouldn't you? Because otherwise they'd become dependent on you. If it was you constantly.
Yeah, you don't want to be a crutch. It's all, which is the thing I love about coaching, because it's very forward-looking, but it's all about facilitating the individual to find their own way. It's not about me advising them. I'm not mentoring them. I'm not sharing what I think they should do. That's absolutely not what it's about. It's about enabling them to find the right way for them to move forward. Because we all have different maps of the world. We all view the world differently through our experiences and our aspirations.
Is that program that you were part of still being run now?
Yes, it is. So it started off, Remploy won the contracts for all the prime contractual regions initially, and now Maximus are running it. So yes, it is out there, which is great to see.
And as employers, how can you access that program? Is it funded? It is
funded. So Access to Work covers people who are in employment of more than, I think it is now 16 hours a week. And it's a fantastic service. So anybody who has any form of condition that falls under the Equalities Act can apply. So that could be if you're on the autistic spectrum, or you're neurodiverse, if you've got any physical limitations, if you've got any long-term health conditions. It has to be long-term health conditions as opposed to breaking your arm or your leg. It can't be around something that could be fixed in several months. It's the long-term health conditions, and they're to support you, to enable you to work, either helping you get to and from work, or having a support worker in work, or having they can help you have specific therapy or counselling to help you manage your job. It's a great service.
Is it for the employee to apply for, or does the employer have to be a part of it?
The employee can apply themselves, but it's always good for the employer to be aware that it's out there.
Because I'd not heard of it. I'd not heard of it.
Yeah, it's part of Job Centre Plus. It's a really good service. Really good service.
So you mentioned obviously this was 2011, 2012. You were doing this, and times have changed quite a bit over the last few years, to the point where a lot of the right-wing media calls anyone that gets involved with something like this as woke, because anything they don't like is woke. Do you think enough is being done now to help people that need this help, or is there a lot more that could be done?
Oh, I think there's so much more. I think it's really interesting. Certainly back in the day when I was working in the NHS was very much geared around physical health, and the mental health service was very much an add-on. And I think that mental health is huge. We all have mental health. We all sit somewhere along the mental health spectrum, and that there is so much more support that can be put out there. And I think particularly for young people who've come through COVID, I think levels of anxiety are high, levels of resilience are low. And I think it's something that needs to be really invested in, because we create our own reality. And if you're in a poor state of mental health and you have high levels of anxiety, you tend to have quite a fixed mindset. You hunker down. You're not curious. You're not stepping out there. You're just trying to cope with your emotions on a day-to-day basis. It's really, really challenging. And I think that there are a lot of therapies out there. There's much more coaching, counselling, psychotherapy, which is really good, and all been very acceptable in the States for probably the last 20, 25 years. But I think it's only probably more in the last 5 or 6 years that it's becoming much more of a focus in the UK, and much more accessible, and far more therapists out there supporting people, which is a really good thing.
And it seems that a lot of the stigma is going away from having it done as well.
Yeah. I think it's essential. I would recommend it to anybody, because when you train as a coach, you go through the process yourself. And so for me as a coach, I almost reflect what I do in my life. I've created my job in a way that I work with people I really love. I put myself opportunities that really stretches me. I've created real niches for myself, that I've stepped into arenas I never would have done before had I not been a coach and gone through that coaching process myself. It really enables you to kind of open up your mind and start to, we've all got so much potential within us. So much potential. It just enables you to tap into the right potential at the right time for where you want to go. So I would thoroughly recommend it. And you're right, I don't think there is stigmatism around it anymore.
This brings us on, I think, to the another part of what you do, which is the skiing.
Yes.
which is kind of interesting. Probably explains how you know Emma a bit more as well, because I know Emma's very big on that. What exactly can you do to help people, anxious skiers?
Yes. So that is very much about changing mindset. So there's a bit of a story behind that. I was that anxious skier. So I started skiing in my late 20s, and started skiing as a family in my 30s. I had my hips replaced in my 30s.
Wow, that's young to have that done.
Well, it was young, because I was born with a specific condition. So I had plenty of reason to have a little bit of anxiety about my skiing, but that just really manifested itself over the years. And then I had a big skiing accident, and I was on crutches for 4 months. And by this time, it was a bit of a sliding doors moment. Do I give up? By this time, the family loved it. The kids were like, want to do this forever. This is amazing. Did I want to step back and never be in those family photos again? So that was really interesting for me. I soon realized that I was self-sabotaging. I was creating my own anxiety here. This wasn't about my hips at all. And I needed to really develop my coaching skills to find an area that would really help for me. And I'd already started working with some neuro-linguistic programming, / strategies and went off to become a master practitioner in NLP. And that was my game changer. It really helped me reframe my anxiety. It made me feel very different about the skiing. And I reached my goal of falling back in love with skiing. Then a ski journalist, a travel journalist in the Sunday Times weekend section, has a column where people write in, and somebody wrote in saying, I'm a really anxious skier. I'm going on holiday with my family in 3 months. What course can I do to overcome my anxiety? And the journalist referred her to all these technical ski courses. So I thought, I need to share what I have done, because mine isn't about the technical side. None of those courses will help overcome her anxiety. So that's when I started working with some ski companies. This was pre-COVID.
So was there nothing out there at the time then that she could have done? There was
no.
Wow.
No. Nothing.
And
there still isn't. It's really interesting, Darren, because there are a lot of ski instructors who will specialize in teaching anxious skiers, but because I'm coming at it from a lived experience, and I had some pretty emotional experiences, put it this way, on the slopes over my time, because I'm coming at it with a lived experience and also as a professional coach, then I've got a very different angle. And so I started working, as I say, with the ski company, and we hit COVID and that all stopped. So then started working with New Generation Ski School across the Alps, Ellis Brigham, ran masterclasses with Ellis Brigham across the UK, and with the Ski Club of Great Britain, because there is a lot of anxiety, silent struggle really on the slopes. And it's all about how do you switch your mindset away from being anxious to being calm, because if you're on a slope, you've got a pair of skis on and you suddenly get really, really anxious, it just creates such internal turmoil. Your inner voice starts kicking off. You get all that sort of overwhelming anxiety. It's almost like a white noise in your conscious mind, and it's really difficult to be calm and to be logical in the moment. So it puts you in a very vulnerable place, because when you get that level of anxiety, you go rigid, your muscles are tense, you'll lean back on your skis because you're resisting the mountain. You don't want to lean forward and look down the mountain, you'll lean backwards, which will unbalance you in your skiing and makes you far more likely to have an accident. So it's how do you switch that mindset away from that high level of anxiety into being really calm and curious in the moment, so that you can make a plan to get yourself out of whatever situation you're in. Really, really powerful. And whilst this piece might be around anxiety on a mountain, actually it works across the board. So the strategies that you learn around that for yourself are invaluable. So when I went out to Boston and was going out and speaking, I used my strategies before I stepped out there to get myself in the right. What emotions do I need to have with me at the moment? How calm does my mind need to be to step out there and really make a difference, to deliver in the way that I want to do? And sports people do it all the time. So you'll see those golfers stepping out onto that tee and the Open, and they almost step into that circle of excellence where they're lining up the emotions that they need in that moment to be able to perform in the way that they need to perform. And we anchor emotions all the time, yeah.
It's slightly different though, isn't it? Because if you're anxious as a golfer and you step out onto the tee and you're feeling the nerves, you could end up slicing the shot into the lake. That's the worst that's going to happen. If you're anxious when you go out to speak on a stage and nerves get the better of you, you could end up forgetting what you're going to say and you'll never get asked to speak again. That's the worst that could happen. But if you're anxious on a ski slope, there's genuine jeopardy that something horrendous could happen. So is it a slightly different technique that you have to use for that? Because you don't want to make people free of all fear, because fear is healthy if it keeps you alive.
Yeah, no, it does. Fear is really anxiety. A certain level of anxiety is really, really important, because that puts you on your front foot. It makes you alert to any potential hazard. It's when it overwhelms you that it becomes really, really dangerous, and you do become really vulnerable. And once you've been vulnerable once, you have a real fear of being vulnerable again. So that in itself creates more anxiety because you don't want to be there. But if you're skiing on a run, and it might be, say, a red run, you come across a really icy bit, a steep bit, and you sort of go shooting across, you stop and you freeze on the edge of the run, you're facing the wrong way, you've got to turn, you're stuck there, you're looking down thinking this is too steep, it's too icy, it's too busy, I don't like it, I can't move, and you're stationary, you're in a really vulnerable situation. And so it's how do you calm that mind at that moment? So if you can calm your mind down with doing some deep breathing, by managing that inner voice, saying it's okay, I'm going to be fine, I can manage this. I'm going to make a bit of a plan. It's going to be all right. And then you focus on the pathway ahead of you rather than all the blockers. And for example, in a situation like that, you can slide out of that situation off the edge of the run into the middle of the run where you feel more comfortable and you can put a turn in. But it's putting your mind in a really clear and logical place, because otherwise it will overwhelm you and it does become literally really terrifying. It's the most horrible feeling. And even talk about it, you can start to feel it. It will come back. But if you can, change your mindset, it's almost like going to a gym. You have to really work at it, but you can do it. And it just makes an enormous difference. And it's really fascinating working with clients around skiing, because it's very niche, but it really demonstrates the power of those strategies that can have in the moment to make that difference, which can just enable you. Because if you know that you can manage pretty much any situation you come across on a mountain and know that you can keep yourself safe, that takes away so much of the anxiety, the fear of what's around the corner. And once you can do that, you can relax into it. Once you've decided how you want to feel on the mountain, how to anchor those emotions, then it just starts to create a really different experience. And once you relax, so it doesn't matter what level skier you are, if you relax, then your skiing will naturally just evolve. Because this isn't about techniques. Everybody I work with knows how to ski. It's about how do you manage the psychology of skiing.
That's what I was going to ask, if there was any level of actually ski intuition that you're doing with this. So there's none whatsoever.
Now, I don't deal with the tuition side at all. I wouldn't call myself a super high level of skier who will ski any cool weather, and I will ski most things on a pisted run. I absolutely love my skiing, and it's about how much you love it. It doesn't matter whether you want to do the much easier runs or you want to do more challenging runs. It's how much you love it. And I think so much of it is about wanting to be able to enjoy the experience with family and friends and feeling part of the group. Same with the people that I work with. Interesting, it's always women. I've had no male clients in 7 years.
Really?
Yeah, no male clients. That's
interesting.
Yeah, I did run a Tamworth Snowdome masterclass with Alice Brigham this last winter, and there were 8 places, and so fascinating. So 3 women and 5 men, but that's the first time I've had men as part of it. But on my actual coaching, one-to-one coaching programs, I haven't had any men. I've had men ring me and said they'd like their wives to do it, which is fine, but they need to want to do it themselves. Obviously, they need that inner motivation. But it's a really, really interesting area, because the strategies that you use in that moment are just, as I say, they're great life skills to have with you to deal with any challenging situation that you'll come across, either in the workplace or where you're having to step out and do a presentation or deal with a different meeting.
Why do you think there's been no men?
I think I would say that most of my clients started skiing in their 20s and 30s, whereas the men, their partners seem to have predominantly been skiing from when they were children, and so you learn very differently. You have less fear, and so they have grown up to feel more natural on skis. And when the older you are, the more fear you can potentially have, because you see the dangers. And then the women would often facilitate the family to ski. So they'd be sorting the kids out, getting them all up and running, getting them out there. And their partners generally would have boys' trips going on. So they're keeping their skiing skills up. And then the women would find that the children, whilst they were there looking after them and helping them in the first few years, would soon pick it up really quickly and would soon be skiing at a really high level, as would their partner. And then they're not. And they can feel more isolated on the holiday, less part of it. They feel like they're handbrake, they're potentially spoiling it for everybody else. It's quite difficult when everybody else can do it and you can't do it. You feel like you're slowest, you're holding everybody up. And so once you get that level of anxiety, you start to look around and really build that anxiety and look for reasons why. And then they can get to the point where they're like, I just need to let go of this anxiety. I just want to be part of this. Because you would often find that a family skiing holiday would be the one holiday the children would want to come on forever because they just love it. It's in the mountains, it's beautiful, you're outdoors, you're doing, it's really good fun if you love it. And that's really hard if you're not in that groove, if you feel very separated from that.
So can you share any of the techniques you use to help people get over the anxiety of skiing?
Yeah, no, of course. So the first thing I do with all my clients is I understand what they're looking to come out of the ski coaching, and how will they know when they've got there. So what are they looking for? Because that's really important, because creating a goal which will give you that forward momentum, and that goal needs to be an emotional goal. So a client might say to me, I want to ski a red run. So, okay, that's your goal, but let's just peel the layers back on that and really understand the why behind that. Why a red run? So we start to peel back the layers and understand that when they go on a skiing holiday, her husband will ski with the two sons and she is given a ski instructor for the day. So they never ski together. If her husband sees her on the runs, he'll tap her on the bottom of the ski pole saying, come on, hurry up, hurry up. So pretty humiliating, which kind of embeds her anxiety. And then in the evening, the husband and the sons will be laughing about the day they've had together, all those teams experiences that she hasn't been part of. And that for her was really, really difficult. She was on this holiday, but she felt very isolated and she felt almost quite humiliated. And so exploring more and more about what she was really looking for and what her values were around this was very much, she came up with her goal was to be sat on a chairlift with her two sons and her husband laughing about a run they'd just done together, which is a far more powerfully emotive goal, which is really aligned with her values around family and connectivity and shared experiences. So that was the goal that gave her the forward trajectory to kind of move forward. And once you've found the right goal, and everybody will have a different goal, you then start to look at the anxiety and how does the anxiety manifest itself? And how do you know when you're getting anxieties? Where do you notice the shift? What are you feeling? And how, so knowing that first symptom is really, really important. And then you can look at strategies that you can use to manage that anxiety so it doesn't manifest itself into being overwhelming. Because as you quite rightly say, some anxiety is really important. It's our kind of fight or flight mode. But once it starts to overwhelm you, that white noise in your mind really, really locks you down. So understanding your anxiety is really important. And then we look at what emotions do you want to have with you? If we're going to manage your anxiety, and we're going to bring that down to a manageable level for you so you have some control over it. How would you like to feel? What's you looking to feel? So when I'm skiing, like to feel calm and empowered. I'd have other clients who want to feel fizzy and excited. And so we're all different. It's like, how do you want to feel? And let's look at how we can anchor those emotions. So those are the emotions you step into when you're skiing. So we go through that whole process. And so the ski coaching kind of builds one stage on the next so that as they're leading up to their skiing holiday, by the time they get on their skiing holiday, they're really excited. They've got the strategies. They've really practiced it. They've got that really strong visualization that they're using around their goal, about how it's going to feel. So it's about there's a very good mood map that I use in coaching, which on the top right-hand side has a red box, which is about high state of anxiety and stress. And the grey box is below it, which is like the burnout, worn out, step away, grey box. And then on the opposite side, on the right hand side, you have the top green box, which is the motivated, positive, energized, creative. And then underneath that is a yellow box, which is like the calm. This is where you relax, how you recharge your batteries. And so with the ski coaching, and in fact with most coaching, it's very much about what strategies you can use to stop yourself flipping over to the red and the grey side, but to keep you on the green and the yellow side. And when you find yourself starting to shift over to the red and the grey, what can you do to stop yourself being fully embedded in it, to keep yourself back over here? And so it's developing those strategies with that individual. And it's really powerful and it's so effective. And if you have the right goal, you're so invested and wanting to make it happen. That inner motivation is really, really key. If you have somebody else telling you need to do this, you should do that coaching. It'll make you a great skier. You'll enjoy your holidays more. That won't work. You have to really want it yourself. That's really important.
And as you mentioned earlier, because you brought up golf as well, presumably the techniques that you're using would apply to not just any sport, but any accomplishment that somebody wants to be able to be better at and do well.
Yeah, and it comes into my coaching that I do with executive coaching and personal development coaching, because it's all part of, what's holding you back, what's stopping you. And if it's anxiety that's stopping you, I would say much better to look at how you can manage that anxiety and then choose if it's something you want to do rather than step away because of the anxiety. It's really interesting because certainly going back to skiing as a good example, that often people say it's the sound of the ice under my skis that's really frightening because it's really noisy, and obviously it's very hard skiing when there's ice around. Or it's the sound of a snowboarder because they're more unpredictable in their movements. I'm worried they might hit me. It's about how you change that mindset. So actually, it's good to hear that there's ice. So you should, when you hear that the skis are getting getting noisy because of the ice or other people's skis are, that's a really good alert. And rather than seeing that as an anxiety-inducing moment, it's like, that's interesting. That's good to know there's ice around here. I need to just take a look at where I'm skiing. I just need to use my edges a little bit more. I'm just going to slow it down a little bit. So to use it in a positive way. And if you hear there's a snowboarder behind you and you're worried about the unpredictability of the snowboarder, it's about, okay, I can hear snowboarders. Let me just take a look. Where are they? How can I stay well clear of them? So rather than allowing it to put you in a state of anxiety, you enable it to put you in a state of curiosity so you can make a plan and manage it more effectively.
So you're effectively just reframing the same.
It is. That's exactly what it is, Darren, reframing. Yeah, you've read the book.
yeah, of course I have. Yeah. Okay. In terms of clients then, is this word of mouth you're getting this, or are you doing any kind of advertising?
For my skiing, a lot of it's word of mouth. So I do masterclasses, as I say, with Alice Brigham. This is the second year I've done those. So an hour and a half masterclass about skiing with confidence. Is
that online or is that in person?
No, that's in person. So I'm doing two of them in February in Bristol and London. I write lots of articles. I do podcasts. So it's where people, skiing magazines, people will read about it. I also have an @free to ski Instagram account, but so much of it is word of mouth because it's, as I say, it is quite niche. But it's such a game changer when you have those sort of experiences, that's negative experiences, and it's very liberating and empowering to be able to overcome it. But I will work with clients who have got situations coming up, like it might be a big presentation that they have to do that they're really, really anxious about. It might be that they're going through a divorce and they're dealing with a really challenging court environment that is making them really, really anxious about the outcomes. So you can apply these types of strategies to lots of different situations where you can potentially get overwhelmed by your anxiety, which will just change the outcome of the event that you're in when you don't want it to. You want to be able to engage with that event so you're feeling clear, you're feeling logical, and you can perform in the best way that you need to in that moment.
So how much of your business then is based around skiing and how much is around the business work?
Well, business work is my day job. Most of my ski coaching is in the evenings, and it's very much this time of year. So it's not so much December because you've got Christmas and New Year in there, but January, February, March is very much my ski coaching. But otherwise, most of my work is executive coaching and personal development coaching.
And what sort of businesses do you work with for that?
Oh, I was hoping you would ask me that. I work with the small to medium-sized business sector, so I love working with smaller companies. I love impactful coaching. So I would work with a business leader who might have a company of maybe 6 up to maybe 30, 40 employees. And generally that relationship starts with them seeking coaching because they want to get some clarity for the vision for their business and where they're going. And so going through that whole coaching journey with them, and then we'd look at embedding that in the business about how do you create a values-led business. Because for me, it's the people in the business that will take that business from where they are now to the next level. And very much part of that is the why behind the business. So it's not what you do and how you do it, it's the why you do it, which creates that unique USP. And understanding that and working with teams who really buy into that and who really understand what the values are within that business and have been part of creating that values makes a very powerful and engaging workforce, because you want your teams to be energized and motivated. And when big challenges come into the business, you want them to be curious to look at how can we overcome that. You don't want them to be overwhelmed and anxious and stepping away. And so, and as businesses grow, if you can create that platform of being a values-led business, it creates a really strong basis for them to recruit to and to develop and grow the business.
So your target client then, they don't need to know their why and they don't need to have all the values within the business. You will work with them to create that.
Yeah, definitely. And then because my background with ergonomics, which is very person-centered, I'm a great believer that everybody within your business has so much to offer, with their skills, their aspirations, their experiences, and to be able to tap into that within your business is really, really powerful. And so it's about, how do you do that? How do you bring them with you on the journey? So you're not saying, well, this is my mission and these are my values for the business, right? This is how it's going to be. You make them, they become part of that journey with you, and they utilize their skills and their experiences and aspirations to really help you along the way. So you have a really energized business, and it's a really tough gig out there, come April, when, all these additional costs to a business, particularly small businesses, are going to be rising. It's a difficult time for businesses because, they're managing their financial bottom line, and, it's not necessarily a time that they feel ready to invest in projects like this. But actually, if you can create a really good workforce who are behind you every step of the way, it makes such a difference. It creates so much more value within the business.
And is there a particular kind of industry that you work better with?
Well, it's interesting. I've done quite a bit of work in more the tech sector, but no, because any type of business really. So from somebody who recycles telephones and computers to businesses that are manufacturing things, to social media businesses that are growing really quickly and employing more and more people and really building their teams. It applies across the board. But for me, it's much more about working with a business leader who is really motivated, who's really energized, who wants to create an energized workforce, who wants to create that really positive culture within the business, which is almost like the personality of the business. Because you look take the airline industry, and you have EasyJet, you have Wizz Air, you have Ryanair, you have BA, you have Virgin, and they all have very different cultures. We all view them quite differently. Yeah. And it's how you create that personality within your business and what you want that to look like and how you want it to work for your business. And whilst many businesses will know that subconsciously, it's bringing it all into the conscious mind and creating a real sense of purpose around that I think is really important and can really make that difference.
So it's more the personality of the business owner rather than the business type itself?
Yeah, the business type really is not. It could be any sort of business, but it's about having a motivated business owner who really wants to create a really engaged, energized team around them to develop their business and to grow their business.
And I think the $1 million question then is, if you've got an engaged business owner that wants to create a motivated team around them, what's the actual financial or business benefit to them in doing that?
It's about having a team who will go that extra step for you, who won't just clock off on time, but if there's a project comes in, they will put themselves out to work with you. And getting goodwill in a business, I think, is hugely valuable. It's not something you can buy or you can necessarily quantify, but when the chips go down and you've got goodwill in a business, your teams will carry it forward for you.
Whereas adversely, if you haven't,
they won't.
Things can go horribly wrong, and you could end up with your business folding.
Yeah.
Have you got a particular... Again, I probably can't get specifics of you, but have you got a particular success story that you can allude to without giving us names?
Yes. A particular business, a local business, so they had a team of 7 employees, and the business owner, we started some coaching together. He wanted to get some real clarity on the way forward for the business. He was having certain issues around that were holding him back, that he wasn't really sure where they were coming from. So we went through the whole coaching piece together, and then started working with the business and working with his teams to really understand what their values were, and with the business owner to look at creating the values within the business. It was really interesting. So looking at his team, at the synergy you would have between everybody's values who's working in the business, there were, the real core values are coming out quite clearly. And then we then sort of took that one step further and looked at the vision and how to create the vision. And he's had this moment where he said, I absolutely have it. And he drew this great cherry tree with blossom, and the roots of the tree were everything that was important about the business, the people in the business, and all the certifications, the professionalism of the business, that they had. So the kind of the root system of the business, the bedrock of the business that fed this really strong tree, and then all the blossom. And on one side was the benefits that the customers got from working with such a strong business and such a ethically focused business. But on the other side was everything that they were giving back to the community from the business, because that was a really important part of the business, but not something they'd ever really talked about first and foremost. But came through really clearly. And so from this visual, and he then got it all put up on the boardroom wall, it became the real talking point to any potential customers came in. And it was really clear that, look, this is our professional excellence. This is what we deliver to our clients, but this is what we give back to our communities on this side as well. And so it really encapsulated it all, and then becomes a real visual image that you can talk about, that you can put it in your tenders. You can, so it's about getting that real clarity, and that everybody else was really on board with it.
No, that is massive. That companies that do give back to the community, give back to the social aspect, that it's huge for them. And it's something I was talking about earlier on today that I've not really considered much in the last 15 years as a business owner, and that's legacy. What do you leave behind? Do you make the world a better place? Do you leave things better for the people that follow you? And the older you get, the more you start thinking about how important that actually is. And presumably that's something you can help businesses with as well.
Yes, absolutely, because I think that's really important. I think, there are different ways of doing it. And for my business as well, I'm a great believer in giving back. I think it's really important. And, whilst these coaching strategies sit out there in the executive sector, I think there are much broader communities who would really benefit from accessing that. But, how would even they know what a coach did or where to find them, never mind afford one? And so I'm a great believer in working with local charities. So, for example, YouthFed, I'm working with at the moment about...
They're next door to us.
Are they?
They are right next door to us.
Such a great charity, a great charity. So I've been doing some resilience training with the teams at YouthFed, because I think it's really, so they can then take these strategies and use them in their communities that they're working with, because I think everybody should have the opportunity to know how to live a fulfilled life. And I think when you're living with a lot of adversity, you become much more in survival mode, and it's really difficult. How do you even know how to move forward if you're feeling stuck in life with whatever it is? So last year I wrote a book called How to Get There, Your Personal Coaching Guide to Take You to the Next Level, which is which basically documents that whole journey, about that first piece around actually, if you're feeling stuck, just reflect on what your values are and what even are your values, and takes you through a process of this is how to work out what your values and your beliefs are, and then how do you create a goal that's aligned with them, and then how do you create that mindset so you can move forward. So what a fixed mindset and what a growth mindset is, and how you can pull a growth mindset onto that goal to really enable you to move forward with it. What resilience is and challenges, and how can you build your resilience so you grow stronger from those challenges rather than being crushed by them. How do you create that environment for you to thrive in with your goal? Who do you need to seek? Who do you need to have around you? And so this whole journey, and when you get to your goal, actually the great thing is your goal was the thing that gave you that sense of purpose, but it's a journey along the way to the goal that you have learned so much about yourself, which means that by the time you get to your goal, you'll probably be looking for something else to move on and do. Because I think it's so important to be able to share this. So as I said, that's why I put it in a book, and I do work with charities. I think it's really important.
Because as you evolve and develop and get closer towards your goal will inevitably change anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like my first goal, personally, for my skiing was just to fall back in love with it with a family. I now find I'm a leading UK, well, actually probably international coach now. I'm in America, doing something that nobody else is doing, but absolutely loving it and opening all sorts of really exciting doors and opportunities. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned a moment ago how some businesses don't know how to find a coach, or where to find a coach, or how to afford a coach. That brings me nicely onto the fact that we're pretty much out of time. But for those people listening to this thinking, I have found a coach and it's you, how do they get in touch with you?
So I have a website. My business is called ProAbility. When you type it into Google, it'll default to probability, but persevere. That was a rookie error. So ProAbility Limited, but my name's Louise Pode, that's Pode. I also have a personal website, which is louisepode.com, which is where my book is. Talks about, my legacy and what I think is really important about giving back. My book's there as well. But yes, message me anytime. I'm always delighted to have a conversation, and you can find me through my website, or my email is louise.pode@proability.co.uk.
Okay, thank you very much. I will put all of those links to both your websites and to your book directly below the podcast on YouTube and iTunes, Spotify. So anybody scrolls down, they'll see the links to those there and can click on those to get directly in touch with you. Louise, thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast. I've learnt so much, and including how to say musculoskeletal. No, I haven't. I'm going to practice that though, and I'm going to get it for next time. Trust me. So thank you very much.
Oh no, thank you, Darren. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.